We turn now to Victor Gao. He's the chair professor at Soochow University. Give us a sense of the importance of this day.
Thank you very much for having me. Today is a very important day in Chinese history, and I would say in the world's history, because the September the 18th incident, as far as China is concerned, marked the beginning of the Japanese invasion and occupation of China, and the Chinese people's start of the war of resistance against Japanese aggression, which lasted altogether for 14 years. And the latter part of this period overlapped with what we call the Second World War. And China fought the Second World War together with the United States and the former Soviet Union and United Kingdom. And eventually, we, through concerted efforts and great sacrifices, won the war against the imperialist Japan in Asia and against Nazi Germany in Europe. Now, this laid the foundation of the Second World War, post-Second World War world order, which we are still living through. And it is in this sense that we can see how this celebration today in China is important, because we want to always remember the importance of peace and the futility of war, especially of war of invasion and occupation. And I think we need to stand very firmly for peace and development and maintaining stability, rather than, for example, overreaching for ulterior motives, which eventually will hurt yourself. And this lesson should also be very much borne in heart by Japan and the Japanese leaders and the Japanese people, because if you look at Japan today, Japan, the country which unconditionally surrendered at the end of the Second World War, still has territorial disputes with China, with South Korea, and with Russia. This is unbelievable. And I hope Japanese people and the government will really learn the lesson from their complete and unconditional surrender at the end of the war and embrace peace in eternity.
Speaking of learning lessons, for people throughout the world who are not familiar with what happened on September 18th, can you give us a brief background? It really started as a false flag operation, didn't it?
Well, on September the 18th, 1931, Japan actually launched a sudden attack disguised in what they call an attack by the Chinese troops in Manchuria, the northeastern part of China, against Japanese interests. And from there, Japan occupied the northeastern part of China. At present, it comprises of 3 provinces, and eventually Japan turned the northeastern part of China into a separate country called Manchuria, which is absolutely a colony under Japanese rule, and Japan set up the Guangdong Army, that is the Manchurian Army, in Manchuria, which became the hardcore forces of the later full occupation of a big chunk of Chinese territory. Remember, at the peak, Japan occupied about 2/3 of the land territory of China, and Japan occupied all the total length of the Chinese coastline. Then Japan, on that basis, launched attack against Pearl Harbor and brought the United States into the war at a later time. So the September the 18th incident should actually be marked as the real beginning of the Second World War, because Japan, building upon what it claimed as success in the war afterwards, after the September the 18th incident, gradually occupied larger and larger parts of China, and then they colluded with Nazi Germany and Mussolini Italy, and formed the axis of evil eventually, and they were very much defeated in 1949. So in China, we remember this incident not only for the Chinese context, but also for the international and the global context.